So welcome to high school worship this morning. So we're so glad that you guys are all here. And so before we get started, I want us to all start thinking in our minds, start thinking about an object, a physical possession that we really want, but is just a little bit out of reach. Something that we really wish that we own right now. Okay, sorry. Something we really wish we own right now. And so if I think for myself, what that would be is a 2017 World Series baseball by the Astros signed by the whole team. And that's something I've really have this desire to have and add to my collection. It's not just a little bit out of reach, it's way out of reach. It's in like another universe somewhere because this thing's like thousands of dollars. So I'll never obtain this item, but it is something that I wish I could have as a part of my collection. And so I know I do not need this baseball, but it doesn't mean that I don't really want it. And so when we're just starting to think about these things, what are some things that you guys wish you own right now? Anybody have anything that they could share that they wish they own right now?
Full head of hair.
A full head of hair! Okay, that's going to be tough, dude. Anybody else? iPhone. Okay, that's a good one. Anybody else have anything? This could contain gaming systems. You said iPhone, full head of hair, all of these things. And so I'm sure you guys have heard it a million times. I have myself growing up, is that there's a huge difference in the things that we want and the things that we need. And so every time that you get online or you watch a show or you turn the radio on or you're driving down the street, you're seeing billboards everywhere. There are ads all over the place. And 95 to 100% of the time, those ads consist of things that we definitely do not need. But they are things that we really want. The things we really want. And so for some people, especially today, this has become an epidemic, wanting more, newer, and better stuff. And so we're getting ready to show 3 images up here. And so if we can get the first image up on the screen at some point. There we go. Does anybody know what this is? A storage unit. It is a storage unit. And so this is a container that people put their extra stuff. So if they have things that they've acquired throughout the years, but they don't want to let go of it, usually they rent one of these and you pack it full of things. And so if you guys have watched Storage Wars or any of those kind of shows, you know that people can pack a lot of junk inside one of these storage containers. And so this next slide that we're going to show you is going to be a number. So 2,400, this is across the continent of Europe. If you add up all the storage containers that people have used to pack their extra things, it's 2,400 storage units. And so that's a pretty big number, right? If you count all the way up to 2,400, it's going to take you like 40 minutes. Don't try that now. Wait until afterwards. But it takes about 40 minutes to count to 2,400, so that's a lot of storage units. And so does anyone want to even venture a guess how many storage units are in the United States? How many? That is a lot. But no, it's not millions. I'll give you that. What do we got? Well over 100,000. Go ahead and give us the number. 58,000. So we're all really overshooting, but I know why. Because if we think about within a 2-mile radius from here, how many? We can think probably 10 places that you can go and rent a storage unit. So that is a lot. That is 24 times more than the entire continent of Europe. Okay, so that's a lot of storage units. So that is more than all the McDonald's and Starbucks and CVS and Walmart's combined. And so if we think about it, there's a lot of Starbucks. If I'm living on State Street right now, there's a Starbucks, but in front of the Kroger that also has a Starbucks. If we go down Veterans Parkway, there's a Starbucks in front of the Target who also has a Starbucks. So there's a lot of Starbucks. There's McDonald's everywhere, and none of their ice cream machines work 100% of the time. Right? So there is a lot of these places, but there are more storage units than all of those combined. And so I think it's safe to say that we have a problem with stuff. I think a lot of people have bought into the lie that the things that we want are actually things that we need. But here's the truth. We don't need the latest phone. We don't need the latest gaming system. We don't need the newest shoes. We don't need a lot of these things. And when we do acquire them, we clearly don't want to give those things up. We clearly don't want to give those things up. When I was in middle school, I had a friend. His name was Jesse. His name was Jesse Chavez, and we probably all have a friend sort of like this dude. We traded everything with each other. We were constantly trading our stuff, toys, video games. Everything in my room is at one point his and vice versa. We just constantly traded. But the thing that we traded the most was baseball stuff. We trade baseball cards, autographed baseballs, all this kind of stuff. It was just what we did. And so no matter what the trade was or what the items were, the most important part of the trade was winning it. It was walking away and thinking, man, I did what I did to get the best deal between the two of us. Give up something and get something huge in return. That was just a part of it. It was winning the trade. And one day, I made a trade that was so brutal that it ended up getting Jesse in all sorts of trouble. I convinced Jesse to trade me an autographed baseball with Doug Drabeck and Ron Gann on it in return for a video game called Kirby's Dream Land for Game Boy. And so, for you guys who don't know, this is back when Game Boy was just black and white. This wasn't even Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, any of that kind of stuff. We're talking the black and white, Kirby's Dream Land. This game was terrible. If you go to IGN or any gaming thing, or gaming website, it shows that this game is one of the top 5 worst developed games by Nintendo. So this game sucked, okay? And so I put it in. I knew within 5 minutes that I did not want this thing, but I needed to figure out how to unload it. So I convinced Jesse to trade me this baseball in return for this game. And so we ended up making this trade, and he got ripped off clearly, and it wasn't the right thing to do, but it ended up getting to the point where Jesse was not allowed to talk or hang out with me anymore. And so we got a lot of trouble over this trade. At that time, I thought that I was being a boss. I thought that I was being a boss of my stuff. I thought I was taking control of the things I wanted. I allowed my desire for this baseball to ruin a friendship that I had. And the truth is, I was letting stuff become the boss of me. And so in this series, we're asking questions. We're asking the question, who or what is the boss of me? And last week we talked about our tendency to want to be the boss of me. And that's where this golden Shazam right here has come in, the God of me. I want to be the boss of myself. And a lot of times that can give us that we have a tendency to get ourselves in trouble with that. And so this week, we're going to talk about the second idol that we end up worshiping a lot of time, and that is our stuff, our money, our things. So last week we learned about a word that you never really hear outside of the church world, and that's idolatry, right? Which is what we call worshiping any other god than the one true God. And so in the days that the Bible was written, people a lot of times worshiped many, many gods. They had a lot of gods that they turned to. As long as things were going good, they'd stick by those gods. As soon as things started kind of going south, they started to look at other ways. So they would trade these old gods in to try to find some newer, greater model in hopes that this God would serve them better than the gods that they've been worshiping, right? And so even the people of Israel, the true God's chosen people, were guilty of this. And so we're going to read this out of Exodus 32, 1 through 4. It says, when the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him. We don't know what has happened to him. So when Moses was on the mountain getting a message from God, the people of Israel decided, this God is taking way too long. He's taking way too long to take care of things and do things for us. We're going to go find something else to do now. We're going to find another God to worship. And so when Moses came down from the mountain to present the Israelites with the 10 Commandments, we talked about this last week. Does anyone remember the very first thing on the list? Is this right here? Not this right here. 20, 1 through 3. Okay, so 20, all right, there we go, sorry. And God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. And so it's pretty ironic to see that when we know what they were doing while he was up there getting those commandments from God. And so the word before in this verse, when translated, it doesn't mean order. It doesn't mean rank. It doesn't mean you can worship these other gods as long as I'm sitting in the front seat. Or you can worship these other gods as long as you put me first. What it means and what he's telling people is you are to have him and only him, the one true God. You have no other gods, period. Not order or rank. You have no other gods, period. So we're going to kind of reveal the very next idol that we have here. We have a golden piggy bank that represents the god of stuff. God of stuff. And so after this happened, many years after the golden calf incident, there was a man who was listening to Jesus teach. And this man called out to Jesus in Luke 12. There we go. All right, someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." And so I'm going to stop really, really quickly right there, because already what we're seeing is a man who has given his stuff or his desire for more stuff a lot of authority over his life. He has let it come between him and his brother. And so we're going to continue reading. It says, Jesus replied, "Man who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. So according to Jesus, the riches, the possessions, and the stuff that we store up for ourselves is worthless. So all of the things that we keep collecting more and more of, at the end of the day, at the end of our lives, is worthless. So what's the point? We could spend our limited time here on earth trying to obtain and acquire more and more things. But if today were our last day, is that really what we want our lives to be about? Is the pursuit of more stuff? Jesus makes it clear that although the world may teach us to acquire more and more and more, the quality of your life has nothing to do with your stuff and the stuff that you own. No amount of stuff can satisfy you. I talked earlier about this World Series Astros baseball. If I were to acquire that, does that mean I no longer want things? No, I'll probably start looking to the next thing. A lot of times I've seen a lot of you guys collect shoes. When you get those shoes and you get the shoes that you've wanted forever, does that mean that's it and you don't want any more shoes? No. But we keep trying to acquire things. And a lot of times, if that's all it's about, we're going to be left feeling empty at the end of the day. So what can we do? How can we break away from worshiping the god of stuff? And the answer is probably simpler than we might think. And so last week, we talked about defeating the god of me when we give up our seat. We talked about defeating the god of me, Shazam, by giving up our seat. And today is something very, very similar. We're talking about defeating the god of stuff by letting go of our things. It's that simple, and it's that difficult. You may not have a house, and you guys may not have cars, and you may not have a huge disposable income right now at this point in your lives, but you do have something. And someday, you guys are going to have a lot more. And so that's why right now it is so important for you guys to talk and hear about these kinds of things, so that way you can develop the kind of habits and the relationships with your stuff that's healthy. The kind of relationship where you can have stuff but your stuff won't necessarily own you. And so how do we know when we're worshiping the God of stuff? And so we're going to go through 4 points. How do we know when we're worshiping the God of stuff? The first is when you prioritize your stuff over people. When we prioritize our stuff over people. When I made that trade, I was clearly not prioritizing people. I was prioritizing my desire to have stuff. And when you always want more stuff. Second one is when you always want more stuff. I said earlier, if I get this phone, if I get these shoes, does that mean that's it? No, when I always want more stuff, we know we might have something going on. When you're hesitant to share your stuff, that's mine. I'm not going to share that with anybody. That's mine. And when you find your identity in your things or stuff, when you find your identity in your stuff, we all sometimes can be guilty of this. That car that you own or the clothes that you wear, is that where your identity is wrapped into? And what do you do when you fear that you've been worshiping the God of stuff? You let it go. You let it go. You give your stuff away. You give it away. You buy more stuff for other people. And you buy less stuff for yourself. Buy less stuff for yourself and give things away. I learned a lot about this when I had kids. I had to start buying more for other people. It really helped me a lot. And so I was kind of talking earlier about Jesse and this trade that we made. And so for years and years and years, this baseball was a huge part of my collection. It was a huge part of stuff. I put it on the highest shelf everywhere I lived, all the way through high school, all the way into young adulthood. I kept this baseball everywhere. It was a huge part of my collection. It was something I was proud of. It was something I wanted people to see. But then after a while, I started becoming ashamed about how I acquired it. Because I realized even in my adulthood, even though it was so many years ago, my life started to change a lot. And so it became a little bit more of something I was a little bit ashamed of. So after a while, I grabbed this baseball off the top shelf. I found a box. I packed it in the box. And I threw this thing in the closet. And it sat there for years, and to the point where I just kind of forgot that this thing even existed. I forgot this thing even existed. I didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't want to even see this baseball. And so one day, I got on Facebook. I started adding people from my own old home. And over time, you know how they give you those suggested friends. Well, one of those suggested friends was Jesse's brother. So I sent his brother a message, and I said, "Hey, man, how's Jesse doing?" And he sends me one back a couple days later. He's doing great, living in Austin. I sent him one back, and I said, "Hey, man, I still have this David Justice baseball. Can I get it?" Or not David Justice, sorry. This Dre Beck Ron Gant ball. I would love to send this back to him. And he said, "Dude, this is incredible. This is kind of funny. He's going to get a kick out of this. Here's his address." And so I take this baseball out of that box. I start packing this thing with newspaper. And I send this baseball back to Jesse. I don't hear anything back for weeks. And I'll be honest with you, I never assumed that I would. I assumed that would be the end of it. But 2 months later, I end up getting a box back. And it's the exact same box. And so I look at this, and the address has been marked out. And I'm thinking, man, this thing must have been in circulation this entire time. I got this ball back. Okay, whatever. So I open up the box, and at the top of it is a note. It said, "Hey, man, never thought I would ever see this again." It was very short. Unfortunately, I still don't have the Kirby game. But I figured you would like this better. So I got this baseball here. It's a baseball signed by Johnny Bench. And if you guys don't know who this is, he's before a lot of our time. He was a catcher for the Cincinnati Reds, Hall of Fame guy. I was never a Cincinnati Reds fan. This baseball, honestly, is from a dude who was before me, and it doesn't have a lot of significance for me as far as the player. But this baseball is one of my favorite things I have in my collection because of how it was obtained. Because I keep it here in the office because it's a constant reminder to not allow my desire for things to make me go out of character and treat someone poorly. We defeat the God of stuff by letting go of our things. It's easier said than done, but it's something that will set you free. So I want to pray for you guys this morning. God, we just want to thank you for this place. I want to thank you for this room and all these people in it. God, I pray that we can get to a place where we can start letting go of our things. We can start letting go of our desire for stuff and start turning that desire towards you. God, we love you so much. Let everything we do show that and honor you. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.